and I'm here to talk about testosterone today. And I'm 63 years old. I broke a few world and state records. I'm 5'9" and weigh about 210. And as you see, I do have some good muscularity. I think my biceps are about 18 and a half inches, but I'm focused more on strength, and whereas bodybuilders tend to focus more on building muscle. I think it's important when you're over 50 to focus on building strength, and the muscle will come. What I want to talk about is testosterone, and my last video was on the basics of strength training, and it wanted to be 45 minutes because I was covering too many topics. So I just want to keep one topic per video, and I think that'll be easier to digest anyway. Testosterone is the male hormone that enables many of the characteristics of a male: feeling good, higher libido, building more muscle. So that's what testosterone is. I do want to say, when people talk about increasing testosterone, a lot of the supplement OTC, over-the-counter supplement manufacturers, sort of boast about how they can improve testosterone, and there's many supplements out there that say they can. I have to tell you, the reality is, based on scientific studies, is that testosterone that is increased by over-the-counter supplements that are legal to consume by humans, which is important, is not really effective in building muscle. There's reasons for this, but it just doesn't create enough testosterone to really make a difference in building muscle. Now, perhaps it does improve your libido. I'm not sure if that's from directly from the testosterone increase, or is it from something else? I don't really know, but it is pretty clear that the supplements out there don't have much of an impact on building muscle, and I think it's important to know that. So when you're looking at testosterone, there's only there's a variety of choices, but it seems like the best choice is to mimic the testosterone produced by your own system. So there's testosterone produced by your own system. There are what we call steroids, and those steroids are basically somewhat modified testosterone. Sometimes they're modified to be digestible. For instance, the pill forms are all modified so the liver can digest it, but it's very toxic on the liver. So these pills can be toxic to your system. So are toxic to your system, with, in my experience, Anavar being the least toxic and Anadrol being the most toxic. Now that's just based upon my experience and people that I've talked with at the gym over 40 years, because I've been lifting over 40 years. The most popular form of testosterone that is used out there is cypionate. The reason is cypionate has a longer half-life, which means longer life, in your bloodstream than the other testosterones. If you just shoot testosterone itself in your system, it lasts a couple hours, but you get an immense rush. If you inject the same amount using cypionate, it'll last about 12 days. So you definitely, the advantage of taking a long life testosterone such as CYP is you don't have to take it as often. So you only have to inject yourself maybe once or twice a week. With something like sustanon, which is testosterone with a little water, that has to be done a few times a day. So I would definitely stick with CYP, and in fact your doctor that you go to will probably recommend CYP. Before I continue, I did want to bring up the fact that I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving advice. Please don't follow my advice. I'm just giving you what my opinion is and some of my experiences are, and you have to sort of figure out what's best for you. But in everything you do, especially with tests, you should see a doctor and get a lab test to see what your current levels are. Now, that's interesting because when we talk, how much testosterone you take, in milligrams, and what does that translate to in your blood system? It's sort of interesting. I've sort of, over the years, I think I sort of have a rough idea. So if you took 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, sip testosterone, you would have what we would call roughly about 500 NGs per DL. And that's the way they measure testosterone in your blood system, NGs per DL. I'm not really sure what that stands for, but you can look it up. It's NG slash or per DL. And the typical range actually for anyone is typically 200 to 1200. Older people being much lower in the range, probably 2 to 400, 500. That's probably the average for over 50 that you'll see the average testosterone. So if you were 200 NG-DL, which is on the low side, and you took 100 milligrams of testosterone, you'd probably bump up to about 500 or 600 NG per DL. That's the mid-range. If you took 200, in my experience, that'd be about 900 to 1,000 NG per DL. And if you took 300 milligrams per DL, or 300 milligrams, it would translate to over 1,200 NGs per DL. Which is why doctors, when they prescribe an amount, they typically only do 80 to 200 milligrams is typically what they recommend. You can talk to your doctor and try to get a little more. If you sound like you know what you're doing, he sort of believes you, or if you're heavier, you can say, hey, I just need more. Sometimes they'll buy that, but it's always a good idea to start with the smallest amount first. So if they recommend 100, start with that, and then when you start seeing you not making any more gains, then I'd go back and ask to increase the prescription amount. Sometimes in the testosterone world, you hear, actually only in the OTC supplement do I hear about free testosterone versus non-free testosterone. There is some science behind that, but the reality is no bodybuilder I know or anyone that takes steroids has ever talked about free testosterone. So I don't think it's really important, so I'm not going to really talk about it now. But a lot of the OTC manufacturers of these supplements that say that they promote testosterone say it increases free testosterone. But who knows what that means. If you want to build muscle over 50, so the first thing you need to do is figure out where your testosterone levels are. So you got to get a lab test, and typically you can do that through the doctor you go to, or you can do it on your own. You can clearly get your own lab test, and so that's sort of where you got to start. And then what you need to do is, based on that information, that doctor will sort of give you a prescription. He should, at least if you're over 50, give you 80 milligrams to take per week. And hopefully you can take it at home and you don't have to go to the doctor's office to get a shot every week, because that's more expensive and more time consuming. How most people get it is the doctor sends the injectables, the whole thing, the syringes and everything you need, so you can do it on your own. And that's probably the best way to do it, cheapest and actually most efficacious. Basically, if you do decide, with your doctor's advice, to take testosterone to help build muscle, know that a lot of people have. Now, testosterone, is it dangerous? Well, it mimics your own body. No one has ever died from increased testosterone. You can just look at CDC statistics. No one's ever died from a high level of testosterone, but it does cause secondary problems. And the things you'll see are higher blood pressure. You'll probably build up more cholesterol, and you'll have higher liver enzymes, most likely, because your liver is still processing some of the test, even in injectable form. But where you really see the high liver enzymes is from the pills. That'll start skyrocketing those. So over 50, I don't recommend doing anything beyond testosterone in terms of steroids, unless unless you might consider Anavar, the least toxic of those alternatives I talked about. The smart bodybuilders I know today that are over 40, over 45, they'll do test and Anavar sometimes. I mean, that'll be a cycle, because the theory is you want to stack to really optimize building muscle. Now, there's some science behind that. There's some reason behind that, but how much that's important is, I don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows. It's more effective. Rather than taking 600 milligrams of testosterone, you take 300 milligrams of testosterone and maybe 50 milligrams of Anavar. So, and that should have a similar effect. So you don't have to take as much testosterone. So they sort of, so it's like, you don't get all the side effects of using too much testosterone. So it's sort of hopefully easier on your body. Again, when you take testosterone, you're supposed to try to maintain consistency in your blood levels. So that's why with the cypionate having about a 12-day half-life, what you can do, or I don't know, it's like 10 to 12. So that enables you to take it twice a week, basically, to maintain fairly consistent levels. And sometimes if you're only doing 80, one shot might be fine. So the other thing I wanted to bring about is there's testosterone, there's steroids, which are other forms of testosterone, and they are genetically modified. So the body uses them a little differently, and they have a little different effects. Anadrol will make you stronger. Anavar will make you stronger too, a little more leaner. So they all have little different things, and that's sort of why bodybuilders take so many. But when you're over 50, tests should be fine. And perhaps, like, if you want to be competitive, some people out there might combine that with Anavar. So the other thing that is sort of recently new, it's not that new, but it's becoming more mainstream, are SARMs, which are selective androgen receptor modulators. What does that mean? Well, basically, it's on a testosterone. It enables your system to absorb testosterone more efficiently, and so basically it makes the fibers more in your body that attract the testosterone. They will be now more sensitive. So you should, in theory, with the same amount of testosterone, you're going to be using more of it in your it'll make it more sensitive, so it'll be that much more potent. But in itself, it's not a testosterone. But the early research does show it has some of the signs of testosterone, though the effects tend to be weaker. And some even say with some of the weaker SARMs, there are no effects at all. But who knows? It's still not legal for human consumption, but it's legal to own. Okay, so it's going to say on the bottle, if you happen to see a bottle, it's going to say not for human consumption. The FDA has not at all made any rulings on this, because the experimentation's still out and still going. But there's many different types of SARMs, and I'll talk about SARMs in another video because I don't want this to go past 10 minutes. Okay, and the other thing is there's HGH. And HGH for over 50, there's been a lot of debate in science what to use it. But I got to tell you, way back when, in the 70s, the science was saying, no, testosterone doesn't work. It just hurts you. It doesn't help you build muscle. And it was on and on and on about this nonsense for like 10 or 15 years. It's sort of the same with HGH. It actually, everyone I know that's taken it, there have been some positive quality of life effects.